and welcome to this webinar. So hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar series. This is a series that's held every other Wednesday. So for those of you who are new here, my name is Ben Williamson, and I'm the project manager here at the Mountains and Plains Thriving Communities Collaborative, otherwise known as MAPTech. We are the EPA Region 8 Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, and we serve Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming, as well as the 28 federally recognized tribal nations within our region. What we do, we empower communities to build capacities for environmental and clean energy solutions. Our team is based across the region, and they provide free technical assistance to tribes, local governments, nonprofits, and community groups. Our primary goal is to listen and meet communities where they're at. So since our launch in mid-August, we've been actively taking TA requests. For those of you who are new to the TICTAC system, we can help you navigate federal grant systems, find the right funding, develop strong proposals, plan projects, and connect with other groups doing similar work. So we are kind of a catch-all to help you starting to apply for grants and putting together projects related to environmental justice. Before we start today, I wanted to make two announcements, things that are coming up. The first is that the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grant-Making Program, which is really a complementing program to our TICTAC, provides direct grant support to communities across Region 8, is nearing opening of their grant application for their first cycle. So this is a great opportunity for Region 8 communities. The grants range from $150,000 to $350,000 to support these types of projects. And over the next 3 years and 3 cycles, there will be over $40 million available to Region 8 communities. So I will put the information for their website into the chat right now so everyone can keep an eye on their website. And I will also share information through our newsletter as that comes up. The second announcement that I wanted to make is that we are actively seeking nominations for our Tribal Advisory Council. Super important council for our program. This council plays a critical role in ensuring our project meets the needs of the 28 federally recognized tribes and their members in Region 8. The council will provide guidance to MAPTEC's Executive Steering Committee and staff on environmental and energy justice initiatives in tribal communities across our region. So please share this second link that I'll put in the chat. It has the nomination form there with any of your tribal colleagues, and of course, self-nominations are certainly welcome. So I will put this link in the chat. And with that, I will introduce today's webinar. So today we're excited to host Aaron Mugaas, Program Director of the Montana Weatherization Training Center, which provides technical training and consulting services to the weatherization and home performance industries. Today's webinar is titled Safe, Efficient, and Healthy Homes. It aligns with MAPTEC's mission to create sustainable and healthy environments, including in homes. Aaron will share insights on weatherization techniques, energy efficiency strategies, and improving indoor air quality. Aaron brings decades of experience to the weatherization industry as both a crew member and auditor. He's also spent time in private industry as a house builder and home inspector. His training includes degrees in biology and study in land resources and environmental sciences. And his focus at the training center is on health and safety, building science, and hands-on training of practical skills. So we're thrilled to have Aaron join us today. Also thrilled to host another center here at MSU. The plan for today, Aaron will start with the presentation and we'll save time for Q&A afterwards. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube page for future viewing. And if you have any questions, please do use the chat function and we'll address those at the end of the session. So with that, I'll hand it over to Aaron and just say thank you for joining with us today. So Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks, Ben and Barb, for having me today. I'm really thrilled to do this, to tell everybody a little bit about the training center and a little bit about buildings, building science, how we can improve buildings to make them more comfortable and safe. So I think I'll just get started here. The Weatherization Training Center, hold on here. Trying to change my slides here. Okay. First off, I'll just talk a little bit about the program in general, and I'll try to be quick with this part and get to the meat of what we'll talk about today. So this program started in the 70s as a movement to make homes more energy efficient for low-income people in America. And it was part of a large energy bill that's still in effect today. It's been modified over the decades, and it's administered by the Department of Energy. So the mission of the program is to reduce energy costs for low-income families, particularly elderly and disabled, and children, while ensuring their health and safety. So that's kind of a good mission for all houses, right? We want to live in safe, comfortable places. So that's the mission of our weatherization. Looks like it's just going to have a little delay in changing slides. The program, we weatherize a lot of homes throughout the country. It's pretty amazing to me how much energy has been saved over the course of the program. 7 million families since 1976. And this is mostly single family housing, some multifamily as well in larger cities and things like that. And in case you're wondering who administers this program and who does the work on these homes, it's community action agencies throughout the country, places like the HRDC and here in Bozeman, Action Incorporated in Butte, Montana. They all have a little bit different name, but they're set up to help communities with all kinds of different things, including food banks, Head Start, things like that. So weatherization, they've been tasked with that, with this program. It usually the money comes to the states and then it's sent to these agencies. The work done in the home, this is a really long list of work. And don't expect you to memorize or read every sentence, but just to give you an idea, there's a lot of things that we do on homes. It's very structured. We have a lot of training for our staff. They know how to think about a house as a system, how to, and then learn all the skills to actually get the work done. So we do insulation and air sealing, minor repairs, ventilation for the indoor air quality piece, and a little bit of base load energy measures. We'll talk a little bit about base load. That's all the things that aren't, that are user dependent instead of shell dependent. So we try to improve on the base load measures as well, where we can. The training centers were started in the 1990s by the DOE to help train and the staff of weatherization to get everybody on the same page with the work being done and the skills needed to do that work. So here's us. So some of our crew and us training some folks at the training center here. So let's get to the meat of working on homes a little bit. We're going to go over a little bit of house as a system, how energy moves in homes, make you think like an energy auditor. So we're trying to reduce heat loss by insulation and air sealing. It's pretty simple. It's not a very glamorous or really all that cutting edge process. I always think of it as we're in the trenches of of home performance, right? We're doing nasty, dirty work. We're just trying to get the shells of homes to be more energy efficient. And existing homes, we have a lot of older homes in America, and believe it or not, there's many homes with zero insulation in the walls, attics, crawl spaces, basements. Even it crosses all socioeconomic lines. I've seen mansions in Bozeman with no insulation in the walls because they just weren't built that way when they were built. So it really is something that needs addressed, and I think it's starting to be addressed more recently with a lot of the funding that's been coming out. For folks that aren't low income, I think there's some insulation and air sealing money that can come your way as well. So the first process in doing work on a home is what we call an energy audit. And there's a lot that goes into the energy audit. You assess the building more like a home inspector, check out all the systems, make sure everything's sound and healthy. You're doing blower door testing and other diagnostic tests like combustion analysis of appliances. You're looking at the heating system and insulation, doors and windows, and then you're doing an energy model. So we want to see, hey, how much energy is this structure using now, and what would it use with these retrofit measures? How could we reduce that, and what's it going to cost? So we put all that in the computer and figure out what's most cost effective to reduce the energy burden on that home and the energy loss out of the shell. So let's do a little bit of talk here about, so we can think like an auditor. So house as a system, that's what we pound into our students. So a house is a system of interdependent parts. When you do something to one thing in a house, it affects another. And when they all work together, we hopefully get a comfortable, safe, and efficient place to live. Sometimes when you do something to a home, you get problems. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about those problems. Sometimes they're not problems as far as, endangering anyone, but just thermal problems. But sometimes they could be dangerous situations that we create. Keep in mind the house has been functioning. Sometimes when you change the shell of a home, it's been functioning the way it's been for 80, 100 years, 50 years, and you're going to change how it performs. And usually that's for the better, is the goal anyway. This is an example of, you have an older home without much insulation, right? And so the heating system has to run a lot in order to keep up with the heat loss. And so the heater has to be pretty large. Well, when we go in and we insulate, let's say we could insulate the attic, the fence pack the walls, we can insulate the basement, we can plug up all the air leaks. And now that big furnace is completely unnecessary. And it will actually become even less efficient because it will come on and go off and come on and go off very often. And so this is just an example of where, well, now we can put in a smaller furnace. And if you put in a really efficient furnace, it can be even smaller because it will have a 99% efficiency instead of a 60% efficiency. So this is just one example of how doing one thing can affect something else. And this is why you're paying that energy auditor, by the way. A lot of people can find things to do on their homes, and a lot of people are very knowledgeable about what to do on their homes. But it's really nice to have someone that can actually think about the whole house and give you recommendations based on the whole house as a system. Here's another example. We have, air leaking into the attic through a can light, say, and it creates a warm spot. A lot of heat is escaping, and we have more chance of ice dams on the roof. Another quick example, we have a leaky exhaust fan duct, or maybe no exhaust fan duct, that creates moisture in the attic, causing some rot on the roof deck. Also, probably lack of ventilation in this attic, so the moisture can't get out very easily. One of the things I was saying, that there are some bad implications of the work we do. One of the biggest things that we fight in weatherization is that we make houses very tight, but they typically still have traditional atmospherically drafted, we call it, appliances, meaning they depend on the stack effect for the hot gases to get out of the house. That stack effect is fairly strong, and it has been doing its job for 50 years, say. But it needs, for every CFM of air that leaves your house, CFM has to enter. And so when you stop all the CFM of air entering, all of a sudden you have to have that air from somewhere. So when your exhaust fan comes on that you just put in to improve your indoor air quality, when your dryer comes on, when your stove fan comes on, and when they all come on together, then that can pull those gases back into your house, those flue gases from your water heater and your furnace. So this is something that we go through a lot of pains to make sure this doesn't happen, and to correct this, to make it not happen. We want to save that energy by air sealing. Definitely, it's the cheapest and easiest thing you can do, but we don't want to have these other problems. So, talk a little bit about thermodynamics and just how energy moves. The big thing here is it goes from high to low. So our energy in our cold climate, our heat is always trying to go out. And in a cooling climate, it's the opposite. Heat is always trying to come in to those houses. There is 3 ways that heat moves through the home. It's radiation, conduction, and convection. Radiation is just heat radiating from something. We also, heat that radiates is absorbed by other things. It's never created or destroyed. So standing by the campfire, it's radiated to you, and then we radiate that out into space. Conduction, this is the heat loss that we deal with when we add insulation, right? We want to stop the conduction of heat through the wall or through the attic or through the foundation. And so that's heat transferred from the burner to the bottom of the pot in this example. Convection is heat through air, travels with the air or water or whatever it is. So that has to have a medium for it to travel through. And in this burner, all 3 are happening at the same time. So you have conduction of heat through the metal and into the stove around it. You have convection, air being heated and moving. And you also have radiation, which is infrared energy that just can be felt because it's radiating out. So the goal of weatherization, as we kind of talked about a little bit, is to have a comfortable, safe, and efficient home. In order to do that, when we are either building a new house or retrofitting an old house. We want to have that thermal envelope and an air barrier, and we want that to be aligned together. We want properly sized heating equipment, not too small, not too large. Have a really good distribution system so that there's no cold spots in the home, and healthy indoor air quality, which goes hand in hand with some of these things. For example, if you are in an old house and it's got just a central heater, say a space heater in the living room, you're going to have cold, very cold closets, very cold bedrooms, and you're going to have a higher chance of condensation from interior moisture hitting those cold walls, and you're going to have a higher chance of mold developing. So having a house work well thermally is going to help with indoor air quality ultimately. So this is the thermal boundary of a home is sometimes on a complicated home is sometimes a hard thing to define and a hard thing to deal with. So if you have a very complex home, the auditor needs to figure out, hey, where am I going to draw the line for my thermal envelope? And so that's a big part of some houses. Some houses are simple, right? It's a ranch house. It's got a big attic. It's a rectangle, so we can easily define that thermal envelope. This little factoid at the bottom there, I love this one. The 7% void can reduce the R value by almost 50%. It's called a thermal window. And I like to give the example, let's say you went down to Patagonia, the Patagonia outlet in Dillon, and you bought the $800 down parka that they use for Mount Everest, it's got the big hood. You look like the Michelin Man. But first time you wear it, the zipper breaks. So now you have this opening in this $800 down parka, and it's not going to keep you warm, is it? It's going to keep you kind of warm, but you're going to have what's called a thermal window in your parka. I like to also give this example in attics. Lots of times you go into an attic and you'll have a space around the hatch that has been disturbed by various people working in the attic or storing things in the attic. And that could easily be a 7 by 10, 70 square foot space in a 1,000 square foot attic, right? That's what we're talking about here is a 7% void. And that would reduce the R value by 50%. So it's very important to have a very evenly applied thermal boundary. R value, we'll just briefly talk about R value. This is kind of a busy slide, but R value is a resistance to heat flow. The bigger, the better. So we can add R values together. So it's a very easy way to assess any assembly. So a wall assembly, attic, foundation. By the way, there's a couple rules of thumb. Most building components are about R1 per inch. The sheetrock, plywood, framing, whatever it is, about R1 per inch. And then concrete is about R1 per 6 inches. So it gives you an idea if you just wanted to think about your own house or somebody else's. If you have an empty wall cavity, you have about an R4 for that wall. And if you have a full wall cavity, you have about an R15 for a 2x4 wall. So it's kind of the range for walls. And definitely why it's very important to get that foundation insulated at R1 per 6 inches. There's not much going on there as far as retaining your heat in your crawl space or basement if it's bare concrete. There's a thing called an air barrier, which is important on homes. It's typically the sheetrock or the plaster. So it's the interior surface, and it's called an air barrier and not a vapor barrier. So it doesn't, its purpose isn't really to stop moisture movement. It's to stop air movement. And that should be aligned with your thermal barrier to make it the most effective. Another example I like to give of this is, another jacket example. Let's say you could just wear the insulation inside your jacket and not have any of the nylon. It's not going to be all that warm, right? You still have the same insulation value, but when the wind blows, it goes right through the insulation. So that's the air barrier. It stops the air movement, and it makes your insulation way more effective if it's a dead airspace instead of having air moving through it. So there's all kinds of different air leakages that we find in homes. We got direct leakage and indirect leakage. So direct leakage people kind of know about usually. They kind of feel it. They walk by it. The indirect leakage is harder to define and harder to find in a home. There's certain things that drive air leakage. You have to have a difference in temperature. So you have the little, I think on Teams, it's not going to work. My little graphics aren't going to work, but that's okay. As we were talking about earlier, heat moves from high to low. And if you have a hole, an air leak, that will drive that leakage through that hole to have a temperature difference. You can also have a pressure difference. So you have a positive pressure inside the home, that's going to force air out. Or if you have a negative pressure in the home, it's going to draw air in. And things that drive those, that create those forces, we already talked about the temperature difference, but you have wind, heat, and fans, exhaust fans, duct leakage, or air handlers can create pressures in your home, which will force air in or out of the home. Your air handler can actually be actively forcing air out of your home or sucking air into your home. And your air handler is supposed to be heating your home, right? Well, it could also be pushing air out of your home as well. So we have wind. And once again, my graphic's not going to work, but when wind blows across a home, it creates positive pressure on one side and negative pressure on the other side. There's also a natural stack effect with a home. If you live in a 3-story mansion, sorry, you're going to have a lot of heat loss from the stack effect. And it's just it's naturally air rising through the home, and you'll have air being sucked in the low leaks and forced out the high leaks. Really, one of the reasons we've really focused a lot on the sealing up the high leaks of a home. We don't even have a savings to investment protocol anymore for attic air sealing, because it's so important. You can stop that stack effect by sealing up all those high leaks, and it makes the low leaks actually, there won't be as much of a pressure difference, right? So they won't leak as often or as much, at least from pressure. So you still want to seal up those low leaks, but it's really important to get those high leaks sealed up. Also, exhaust fans can also create negative pressure in the home. So your bath fans, stove fans, dryers. Your dryer is your largest exhaust fan in your home, by the way. It's 250 CFM or something, and when it pulls air out of the house, it's creating the negative pressure in your home. Oh, okay. I just have to click on the picture and it'll work. All right. So I talked a little bit about the air handler creating negative or creating pressures in the home. So typically if you have a supply in a room, it's going to pressurize that room. And if an area is more open to the return, you're going to get a more negative pressure. And so this is kind of how a typical house in Montana operates with a forced air system. We have a central return, and we don't have returns in our other rooms. And there's ways we can alleviate that and make that a more balanced system. But typically, this is how your home's going to be working. How do you solve those issues? Well, you can cut off the bottom of your doors to kind of alleviate that pressure. You can put grills above the doors to let that pressure out. The idea is you don't want negative and positive pressures being created by your air handler, because that's sucking air into the home or forcing air out of the home. There are some places in the country where they require return registers in every room, which I'm all for that because it balances that air. So our claim to fame in weatherization and in the home performance industry in general is this thing called a blower door, because the blower door, it gives us a lot of useful information. It tells us, where the air leaks are for one thing, but once we have a final air leakage number and a tightness of that home, it will also inform us on our the ventilation that we want to put in. So we don't want to over ventilate a home if it already has some natural ventilation. And conversely, we don't want to under ventilate a home that's super tight and getting almost no natural ventilation. So the blower door guides us with that and tells us how much ventilation we might want to put into a house according to how tight it is. So how do we quantify energy loss during our energy audit? And some common areas that we find heat loss for infiltration, which is air leakage, they did a study, and these were kind of the common areas. So floors, walls, and ceilings were the biggest. Doors and windows definitely have some air leakage around those. And I'm talking about your typical average age home in America. Newer homes, of course, are built much better, and will have less air leaks. And then insulation, right? That's insulation and air sealing, the bread and butter of what we do when we weatherize a home. So we want to get insulation in the attics, walls, floors, foundations, rim joists, basements, crawl spaces, and bring it up to at least code or better if you have the means and the to do so. Attics are typically just loose filled, pretty easy to do. A homeowner can actually do this fairly well themselves. You can rent the machines from Home Depot, Lowe's. There's charts on the bags that tell you how much to put in for a certain R value, and your goal is an R60. One thing about this though is make sure you air seal first before you insulate. It's going to be really hard to air seal after you put in 12 inches or 16 inches of insulation. And I was saying earlier, this is the most important place to air seal. You're going to trap heat in your home better. You're going to keep moisture out of your attic, because moist interior air loves to travel to that dry, cold attic air. And when it does, it condenses on surfaces. So it's an added benefit to air sealing, is to keep that moisture out of your attic. For old homes, dense packing your walls with insulation is with cellulose or fiberglass. I kind of like cellulose, fiberglass. There's, both sides that will argue about those, but the goal here is to just get a dense packed insulation in there, because in older homes especially, you tend to have a lot of air leaks through the framing, through the sheathing. So it not only gives you a good thermal barrier, but it also stops a lot of air leaks that were occurring in that wall. So various things you could do to floors. You could insulate with spray urethane, fiberglass. I kind of prefer the foundation insulation, but there's some cases where the floor might be more desirable. And that's a whole nother can of worms we can talk about, maybe talk about at the end. But yeah, floor insulation, you're just trying to draw the line somewhere to get that thermal barrier to stop the heat escaping. There's also various ways to insulate your foundation. Foam board is kind of preferred because it has a little bit more resistance to taking on water. Blue board, pink board, it's designed to, it's closed cell foam, so it's not going to take on water. Fiberglass, if you live in a wet area, you wouldn't really want to use fiberglass on your foundation. And then you can do spray urethanes. There's different methods there. Replacing windows, sometimes that it doesn't always have, it doesn't have the greatest payback as far as getting your money back in energy savings, because for the labor and the tiny bit of square footage that you're actually affecting, you're not going to get that return. Although there's a lot of other benefits to windows, right? You'll also be stopping some air leaks from really old windows. You'll be also having a window that actually operates correctly, and is provides egress for bedrooms and things like that. So there's added benefits to windows besides just the thermal benefits. If you are going to keep your old windows, there's different things you can do to help air seal them and make them better thermally by adding a storm window. So if you don't have the money to replace all your windows, you can make them better. 2 panes of glass is an R2. 1 pane of glass is an R1. And a new window that's reasonably affordable from hardware stores is about an R3, because they do some things to the window to make it more efficient by adding some low E coatings, by adding some argon gas between the panes. They can make them a little bit more efficient. Now, you can step it up and get R5 windows, but you pay exorbitantly more for those R5 windows. So if you got the money to do it, go ahead and do it. It's going to save you over time. If you're building a new house, that's when it really is cost effective to just go ahead and get the more expensive windows at the get-go. Doors, kind of the same story. Retrofitting doors. Doors are not as cost effective as far as your energy savings, although so many added benefits to having a door that functions correctly and actually opens and closes and doesn't have air blowing around it. But you can do some weather stripping and sweeps and things like that to improve your old doors. Let's talk a little bit about indoor air quality, moisture and ventilation. So there are pollutants in homes that get trapped, right? And if you live in an old leaky house, ironically, you're probably going to have really good air quality, especially if especially if it's not fire season. So that's the only exception to the rule, is that when you're getting outside air for your fresh air, and it's fire season in Montana, then that's the time when you don't want that outside air. Or maybe you live next to a highway, busy highway. Maybe you live near smoke industry, right? Smokestacks and things. So the outside air isn't necessarily going to be your fresh air. But houses that are built today and ones that we weatherize are tight, and they will trap any pollutants in them more than a house that's leaky. It's kind of just a byproduct of trying to save energy. And you get carbon monoxide, radon, sewer gases, all kinds of different things can get trapped in homes. Water is a big one, because having high humidity in a home can promote mold growth. So humans are constantly producing moisture with their activities, with their hobbies, and so we want to try to get that moisture out of the home. There's some different, sources of water. I like the construction materials in the first year, 40 quarts per day of water being produced. Combine that with a super tightly built home, and there's some issues that develop. I've more and more seen builders complain about getting foggy window panes after the first year. And I think it's because of these moisture issues and the house being so tight that window frame doesn't, or that seal for that thermal window is hot, moist air wants to move to dry, cool air really bad, and it's like it's a thermal process, and so it will get into any imperfection in that thermal window and cause it to fog up. So ventilation is important for all these indoor air pollutants, volatile organic compounds, carbon. Hopefully, you don't have carbon monoxide. You don't want carbon monoxide even in a drafty home, for that matter. You have ozone, H2O, CO2, PM2.5s, and nitrous oxides, and these things will get trapped in your home. Here's kind of the basic goal of ventilation, right? Stale air out, fresh air in, but while keeping a neutral pressure. So the motto, weatherization, build tight, ventilate right, it's kind of a good motto for building in general. And I want to see a bigger push towards a little bit more higher tech ventilation than we're currently doing in homes, but we'll get there. So there's different strategies. Leave the home leaky, right? That was a strategy actually for weatherization. We had what we called a building tightness limit. And so we would only seal a home to a certain point. Well, now we've gone to where we seal homes as much as we can, and we install ventilation. And we do whole house exhaust ventilation. Currently, someday I pray that we will move to balanced ventilation, which is really what you want. You want to be controlling the incoming air and the outgoing air. And you could filter the air coming in. So even during fire season, right, you could be filtering that air. And that's the ideal system to ventilate your home. And of course, you want spot ventilation to get moisture out of the bathroom or out of the kitchen. That's always important as well. But you want to ideally have a separate system for the whole house. I think I'm kind of running out of time here, but we talked a little bit earlier, just mentioned baseload energy. So we want to improve the shell of our home, right? We want to stop that heat escaping from our house, but we also can do other things in our house to reduce our energy use. And that's our base load, our lighting, our water heaters, our water usage out of our taps, out of our showers, our appliances. So all those sorts of things we can, as homeowners, or we can try to reduce that load. So I think that's good for now. We can probably do some questions now if anyone has any questions. I've been rambling on here for a while.
Thank you, Aaron. That was extremely insightful. So I took a lot away from that. So I hope everyone else did. I know I have some questions, but I'm going to open it up to the rest of the participants here. So please feel free to turn off your mic and ask a question, or also type it into the chat if you have any. Thanks, Suzanne. Okay, it looks like we got a question from Barb. Is there a directory of certified licensed energy auditors in Montana? Great question.
That's a really good question. I don't think there is. There is a list. The state has a list, and I know the Bozeman Building Department has a list of people that can do blower doors and it's like a list so builders can see. Lots of times they're required to do a building tightness test on their home, or on the home they just built, or on the duct system. And so there's a list of qualified people. Whether those people do full-on energy audits or not, I'm not certain. It is something that's actually in need, and there's a shortage of people to do energy audits on outside of weatherization. I was a home inspector for a lot of years, and also tried to promote that side of my business, the energy audit, and not very many people were knocking on the door, knocking down the door to get that done. There is money in the bill, this bill funding for people to pay for. I think it's, I want to say $300, up to $300 or $350 for an energy audit that you can get paid for through the bill money. There is also money for weatherization type work in general for homes. So of all income levels, like basically, I think it's a tax incentive. So no, but there is a need for energy auditors in the private sector. There's a few home inspectors in Bozeman I know that do this.
Yes, just as part of the project for MapTech, I have a couple TA requests that will ultimately need an energy audit, and someone trained and knowledgeable to make these, they're all small structures, but make them more energy efficient. So I'm, on the open market, I'm not sure where to turn. I'd like to turn to you guys, but I don't know if that's even allowed. So
yeah, we're currently working on kind of with the state and with other people to train people in the private sector more on how to be energy auditors and to get these third-party certifications to be an energy auditor. So hopefully that's going to improve as going forward. It's a perfect thing for a perfect skill for a home inspector to have. So they're already committed to looking at houses. They're already kind of in that mindset. And just to add that as one of their services, I think it would be an easy thing for them to add, right? Like that's already kind of what they do, but they just need to get a little bit more training on the energy side.
Would you mind, maybe I could follow up, but that information on that $350 voucher from Bill, I think that could be really useful for a lot of our communities.
Yeah, I'll try to find out about that. I know the state has gotten bill money, state of Montana, but they're still working out how it's all going to be sort of administered and dealt with. So, yeah. But I know in the big wording when it first came out, there was money in there for energy audit and energy retrofit work. And also, of course, the glamorous things like solar panels and heat pumps and things like that. But they are actually talking about shell measures, which I was amazed at. I was like, wow, okay, they're talking about that. They're talking about weatherization and giving people money for that. That's amazing.
Cool. Do you know of any assistance programs that people can look to get technical assistance or funding assistance in these projects?
Well, you can always call us. We are part of MSU Extension, so part of our job, I guess you'd say, our mission is to provide free education for people. So give us a call. We can chat. We're not full on consultants where we're gonna, spend a couple days at your house trying to assess it. But we'd love to answer questions. Yeah, I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
As far as the low income energy assist, I mean, if you're income qualified, there is the weatherization program. But as far as people that aren't income qualified, finding someone that will do an energy audit and kind of guide you on what you need to do, that would be the trick.
Okay. I just dropped in the chat the link for that, the DOE's Weatherization Assistance Program.
Okay.
We've got a question here is, can you comment in general about a bit more about any social or demographic patterns, maybe of...
And let me add to that, Ben, thank you. Both in terms of who gets certified or who is interested in doing that work, and also in terms of who asks for these kinds of audits.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, not a lot of people ask for these audits, and I think it has to do with the shell of a home. There's a lot of things people are spending their money on, right? And even middle class people, even upper middle class people, like, they're going to go on vacation, right? They're going to go, they need to make car payments. They need to send their kids to classes. So the shell is it's just not something, and it's very, it's behind the scenes too, right? Oh yeah, I need some insulation in the walls. Well, I'm just going to keep paying my power bill. But those solar panels are looking really interesting. I think I might go for that. I think, I don't know if it's just the word needs to get out that this is a really important thing to do to your home. And then also that if there's actually money available, I think we're going to see a lot more push by people to actually get this stuff done on their homes, because people know, right? It's cold in here. It's drafty. I don't like that room. I don't ever hang out in there. It's cold. But they just don't have the know-how to do it themselves or the money to pay somebody else to do it. So there's not a big push. And I think weatherization has been the only one doing this consistently for, a while. I'd love to see the weatherization programs take on doing work in the private sector, especially if people could pay them with bill money. I think that would be an ideal partnership. But because they're the trained experts and they know how to do this. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What is the ideal air exchange rate for a home? Kind of a quiz.
Yeah. Well, currently the building codes want you to be below four air exchanges per hour, and that's pretty darn tight. So if you're going to build that tight, you would want to put in a better ventilation system, a balanced ventilation system, to keep your indoor air quality good. As far as old houses, typically old houses are around 15 to 20 air exchanges per hour when you encounter them for the first time. If you can get them down to 6 air exchanges per hour, you'd be doing well. Now, if you bring them down to 4, the current building code, that's going to be amazing. I mean, amazing to impossible, but you can do it. And so to achieve that 4 air exchanges per hour, builders do a lot of things now, like caulking the bottom plates when they put the walls in, even putting sealants behind the sheetrock seams, just all these extra measures, because it's really hard to achieve that 4 air exchanges per hour. So I would say if it's an older home, getting to 6 would be really awesome. And air exchanges per hour is related to volume. So yeah, anyway.
Well, thank you, Aaron. This has been extremely helpful for myself, for our team here at MapTech, and then all of our communities that will be thinking about these types of projects. And so this was extremely both insightful and practical knowledge for us. So okay. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks, and wish you all luck out there doing this work.
Great.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody, for attending.
See ya.